More on this story, we're joined by Channell-Justice. She's the director of the Temerty Contemporary Ukraine Program at Harvard Ukrainian Research Institute at Harvard University. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Now, you've recently returned from Ukraine. What did people there tell you about what they want from a peace agreement?
Well, despite the fact that this war has been going on for almost 4 years, Ukrainians are not ready to give up the fight. They're not ready to give up territory that they're still fighting for, that their friends and loved ones have been on the front fighting for. So while maybe I expected before I went to see some people being interested in more of a negotiation, that's not what I found. I think people want to stand strong, and I think it's very important to them that Putin is not given some territory that he's taken by force. So I think the Ukrainians are really hoping to get a seat at the table in these negotiations. That's the most important thing for them.
And we see that the Ukrainian President Zelensky is actually trying to do that. He is trying to have more conversations with Donald Trump with regards to that U.S. peace agreement, which many have said does seem to favor Russia more. But how difficult is this for Zelensky? Because Ukraine at this point does seem to be a little bit more on the back foot, with Russia gaining more territory over the last few weeks.
Russia's gains have continued to be very slow. Russia's not making huge gains, but it is making some strategic gains, which I think is why the Ukrainian side is so insistent on being part of these discussions. Their support, the support from the European allies, from the US in terms of military aid, that's been a key aspect of Ukraine's continuing to hold Russian gains to a bare minimum. So for the Ukrainians, they've been trying to negotiate for, quite some time, and Russia keeps proposing these totally unacceptable plans for the Ukrainians, which we can understand, right? If Ukraine is supposed to lose all this territory and is getting no security guarantees, they don't really have any motivation to give up the fight themselves. What we really want to see is European allies coming together to put something really substantial behind Ukraine so that Ukraine can have a stronger seat at the negotiating table as well.
And when you talk about substantially putting something behind Ukraine from European counterparts, what could that possibly look like?
That is a great question. I think if we had a clearer idea, maybe it would have happened already. I mean, Ukraine has a lot of political support from European allies, despite some fracturing within the EU. The German side has said that they are unwilling to lift any of the economic sanctions and unwilling to accept Russia back into the G7 group. So hopefully these will continue. Ideally, very strong military aid would come through, but we all know that's a little bit unrealistic. The largest amount of military aid has to come from the US, and that's exactly where the US is faltering. So I would say realistically, what we can hope for is united support for economic sanctions against Russia, and that includes the kind of political marginalization and economic marginalization that was fairly unified in the beginning of the full-scale war, but has since kind of decreased a little bit. And closing of additional sanctions loopholes, especially in terms of natural resources, would also be ideal.
And Emily, just finally, in a post-war Ukraine, because this war will eventually end, how do you envision civil society movements actually helping shape the country's future?
I have great faith in Ukraine's civil society. They have been very proactive despite the ongoing war, despite what they're facing as an existential threat from Russia. When these corruption scandals have broken, it's people coming in the streets and saying this is really not acceptable to us. So I actually see a very robust civil society. I'm confident that we'll see some new political faces coming forward, probably from unexpected places, new people we haven't seen yet, new political parties, and a very young, politically engaged generation of Ukrainians. And hopefully that will encourage more Ukrainians to return from abroad and also be participants in civil society and political society. So what I'm really hoping is that this war can end soon, and then Ukrainians can go back to kind of building this civic space and asking for the justice that they deserve in the wake of this full-scale war.
Emily Channell-Justice from Harvard University, great to get your take. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.